Please come and gather with us and march with the Women's Land Army.
Are we? Yes. This is the Land Army song. Would you like to join with us?
Good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for gathering here this day. I would like to welcome you and tell you a bit about the Women's Land Army, which we are currently recruiting for. And though I see we have mixed company here, we certainly do appreciate anybody with enthusiasm and the willingness to work hard to join us as we show what it is that the ladies of our county and of our district are learning to do. So let me give you a little bit of a background about the Women's Land Army. In 1916, our government was looking across the ocean to Europe and seeing the Great War that was taking place there. Our longtime allies that we found with the British and the French and the Belgians and many other countries in Europe were feeling the ravages of war. The landscape was being decimated by battles that were being fought on what had been farm fields. The soldiers who marched off to war were having to leave their farms and their families behind, and they were not getting the food that they needed to not only support the armies they were raising, but also to support the citizens that were left behind. In response to this, our own government decided that we would jump in and help our allies by increasing the production of food and upping the agricultural production here in the United States. After all, we had lots of land that we could use for growing things, and we had lots of people to do the farming. Until April 6th of 1917. On that date, President Woodrow Wilson and Congress declared war on Germany, thus entering us, the United States, into the Great War as well, joining our allied powers in the fight against what they referred to then as the Hun. We will not necessarily use that sort of terminology throughout the course of the day today, but the realization is that they had a great deal of challenge ahead of them with this. For one thing, the United States did not have a very large standing army. After the Civil War, there really wasn't an army that was kept up and ready and mobilized at all times, so they had to raise an army. And while many recruits came forward saying that they would like to join up and serve our nation, they eventually had to institute the draft in June of 1917. Now, if you look around us at the fields that surround us here and think about that pledge that we made to our allies to provide food and the produce of our agricultural endeavors here, what would we lose when we instituted the draft in this country? The men, the farm workers, the people who had been tending the fields, planting and plowing and sowing and harvesting. They were all getting ready, for the most part, to march off to war. This left a great gap in our ability to produce the food that we needed now, not only for our allies, but also for our own army and for our citizens here in this nation. So, who was left to step up?
The women!
The women, indeed. And the step up they did in clubs that were developed in universities and civic associations across the United States. Young women, usually college-aged or working in fields that allowed them to be able to take the summers off, were gathering together and forming what they called clubs, the Women's Land Army clubs. Now, these clubs were modeled after what they'd seen happening in England, where they had to mobilize and up the agricultural production of England with the women on the home front. And they started their own Women's Land Army at the beginning of World War I. We followed suit, and soon 20,000 young women from across the United States came to camps in different states to learn all the things that they had to know to be able to successfully run a farm without the menfolk around. So what we are going to do today is, as a group, we are going to march down into the field. We're going to see the landscape that the women tamed in the absence of the men. We're going to see some of the tools that they utilized, and some of you will even have the opportunity to try your hand at pulling a plow. We will also be finding out what some of the technology was that was just about on the horizon as the decade was progressing, and how much easier it would have been if every one of these women had had a tractor at their disposal to do things such as plowing. Now we've passed out to all of you the Land Army song. If you don't have a sheet, please get with somebody who does. It is sung to the tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and we will sing it now as we march forward into the fields, just as the women did, beginning in 1917. Our Mother Earth has called us, for the nation we must feed. We are proud to her standard to produce our greatest need. We will raise her on and speak a mighty deed as we go. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. As we go working on, we have joined our hands for service with our sisters across the sea. We have forged a mighty weapon in the fight for liberty. By the spirit of our labor in the Women's Land Army, as we go marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. As we go working on. Who has come from Washington, D.C., and has never before spent time on or near a farm. And you have just signed yourself away to be one of the producers of that year's harvest. That means learning to plow the field, learning to plant the field, and then learning to harvest the field, in addition to all the other work that would need to be done on the farm. That includes things like milking the cows, or taking care of the chickens, or putting up new fencing if some should fall. So we have a lot of things to learn. And here in Montgomery County, the women from Washington, D.C. and the colleges there who gathered together to join the Women's Land Army came to learn all of these skills on a farm in Rockville. After they had completed their training, they were literally farmed out to the different farmers in the area, many of whom didn't think that this was going to be such a great idea. So, you see these many women, at first about 100 women, who all learned how to do these farm chores, going out to farms and asking if they could be hired to do work. The initial response from the farmers is, well, of course not. You're a woman, you shouldn't be out in the field. Then the second response was, well, we'll see how you do. You can work a day or two without pay, right? Well, they worked their day or two without pay. They showed that they could do the work. Then they did something unthinkable. They demanded equal wages for equal work. And, well, the farmers didn't have much of a choice. They needed somebody to work in the field. So, darn it, they gave them that. Equal work for equal wages. So it was one strike for the women of the Women's Land Army, but also another piece of the puzzle that helped get women towards being able to get the right to vote.
Hooray!
Indeed. Because if a woman could work equal hours and receive equal pay, should she not also receive an equal vote? Indeed. So, not only was the fight for women's rights happening on the sidewalk out in front of the White House, it was also happening in all of these fields here in Montgomery County, in Maryland, and across the United States. 42 states had clubs that supported the Women's Land Army, mostly in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the West Coast. Old-fashioned ideas really kept it from taking root in the South or in the Midwest, but we still had a very large presence. Again, 20,000 young women signed up to be in the Women's Land Army. So what I have here are a couple of pieces or a couple of implements that the young women in the Women's Land Army would use. This is a harrow that you would take into a garden or into a field. You could push it with the wheels, and you can see that it would fluff soil that's already been turned with a plow. Very handy. Very similarly, you would see actual plows that were made like this, where they would have the edged blade that would turn up the soil, and you would mostly see those being used in small patches or in gardens. But sometimes they had to go into the fields, because not only were the men of our nation being drafted into war, but there was another population in our country that was being drafted into service. Who might that have been in 1917 that would have affected farming?
Horses.
The horses. Many horses that had previously been working in the fields were now being sent to Europe for the cavalry and to pull quartermaster wagons like the one that we have just behind this tree over here on the other side of the tractor. The army needed horses, and it was felt that they needed horses more than the humans or the people here in the United States needed them for farms. So we were left with pieces of equipment like this. Now, it doesn't look like a terribly hard piece of equipment to use, and certainly it seems as though it would be something that you could just get behind and start pushing. But can I have a volunteer come up and show how hard it is to push this plow?
I'll do it.
All right, come on up. Now you have to angle it down properly so that it can cut the soil. Now imagine if you had an 800 to 1,000 pound horse in front of here. Yeah. Do you think that would make it a little bit easier?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, indeed it would. Now, could I get Miss Lauren?
What would you like me to do?
I would like you to take a hold of this, where you would normally hook the single tree for the horse, and I'd like you to pull. So it moved, which is far better than what happened before.
And then now lift it up a little bit. Let's try that.
And this is going down.
So you're getting it a little bit, but still not as deep as you would have if you had a horse that was pulling that plow as well. So one of the creative things that the ladies of the Land Army did was fashion harnesses, and several women at a time would attach themselves to the harness and to the plow, and they would pull with all their body weight, and they would be able to get something to the likes of the horse pulling the plow. Now, our gentlemen with the friends behind you have another example of how the work was done. 1917 was a watershed year in a lot of ways, and a watershed time where we were moving from very primitive technology in farming to tractors becoming more common. Most people did not have a tractor in 1917. We were only about 25 years past the invention of it, so it's still a bit of a luxury. But farmers who could would invest in tractors, and wait until you see how well this plow works now. This is a plow that was originally meant to be used with a horse, but it was retrofitted later so that it could be pulled by a tractor.
Yes.
Would you like to take the plow out and see how well you can do compared to the tractor? What do you think? Would you like to join them?
I think it went a little better when you pulled.
Okay.
It's really all about getting the shot here.
You might want to get a head start.
Do you want to push and we can both pull because that will work? Oh, up.
So you can see with 3 people at this and soil that's already been turned, that it's a little bit easier to plow, and what the plow does is it throws the soil to one side, so you're creating mounds into which you can be planting. Let's see. He has a double-bladed plow, which means that he's going to be able to do twice the work in pretty much a quarter of the time. So now I will ask who amongst you would be willing to become a soldier of the soil and sow seeds for victory in the United States. Well, I thank you for coming out and supporting our ladies of the Women's Land Army and for considering the idea of becoming a recruit yourself. And I invite you now to be able to take a look at some of the equipment that we have down here that our friends have so wonderfully provided. I believe we have a corn sheller that's just over here that you can try your hand at. And if you should take it upon yourself to want to use the harrow out in the field, please feel free to. But thank you so much for coming out and joining us today.